Some stories find us when we least expect them. This one came to me through a friend who spent years photographing wildlife in Africa, a man who learned, late in life, that watching from a distance isn't the same as being present. He told me about a morning in Botswana when he heard a sound that changed everything he believed about himself. I share it now because I think many of us, at some point, have stood at the edge of something and wondered if we still had it in us to step forward. This is for anyone who's ever asked that question. The sound that stopped Lucas cold wasn't a scream. It was lower, a vibration that traveled through the red soil and climbed up through his boots into his spine. He froze, camera half raised toward the empty sky where migrating birds should have been. The Okavango Delta stretched out bronze and gold under the early sun, and somewhere ahead, through the fever trees, something was wrong. The sound came again. Not the trumpet people imagine when they think of elephants. This was a rumble that pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat deep, ragged, ancient. Lucas lowered his camera. His legs were already moving before his mind caught up, pushing through the waist-high grass, acacia thorns catching his sleeve. The smell hit him first. Sweat, urine, something sharp and animal, the smell of panic. He pushed through a wall of reeds and stopped breathing. A mother elephant stood at the edge of a raw trench carved into the earth. Her trunk stretched downward, reaching, straining, and wrapped around her front leg, biting into swollen flesh wire. If this story has found you today, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city or country below. Sometimes the best connections happen when we realize how far a simple story can travel. Lucas edged closer. 5 meters, 3. The trench wasn't natural. The walls were too clean, the angles too sharp dug recently, probably for illegal irrigation. The kind of shortcut that saves a farmer money and costs everything else. His boots found the lip of the trench. He looked down. A calf. 3 months old, maybe less, standing in muddy water that reached its belly, legs trembling with exhaustion. The calf wasn't crying. It was trying to climb, front legs scrabbling against the crumbling wall, sliding back, sending cascades of red dirt into the water below. Again, and again, each attempt weaker than the last. The mother's trunk stretched downward. The tip brushed the top of the calf's head, wrapped around it for a moment, then slipped. She shifted her weight, and the wire around her ankle pulled tighter. A dark line of blood traced down her leg where the steel had bitten through. She tried again. Her trunk found the calf's ear, curled around it, held, then lost its grip. A sound came from her throat. Not the rumble Lucas had heard before. This was different, torn, ragged, the kind of sound that didn't need translation. Lucas's hand moved to his pack. The satellite phone was there, buried under lens cases and protein bars. He should call it in. That was the protocol. Report the location. Let the professionals handle it. Stay out of the way. His fingers closed around the phone. The mother tried again. Her trunk touched her calf's face. The calf raised its own trunk, small, unsteady, and they twined together for a moment. Mother and child, holding on. Then the calf's legs buckled. It went under, came up sputtering, water streaming from its trunk. The mother screamed. Lucas had heard that sound before. Different throats, different continents, but the same sound. A woman in Sarajevo, standing in rubble. A father in Rwanda, holding a photograph. The sound of watching someone you love slip away while you stand there with your hands empty. He pulled out the phone, powered it on. His thumb hovered over the emergency frequency. The water in the trench was rising. He could see it now, a thin stream feeding in from somewhere, the level creeping higher with each passing minute. The calf's chin was barely above the surface. The phone found a signal on the third attempt. Lucas pressed it to his ear, watching the mother strain against the wire that held her back from her drowning calf. 2 rings. 3. Mon Conservation Center. A woman's voice, American accent worn smooth by decades in Africa. I need help. Lucas gave his coordinates, the words coming out clipped, efficient. Adult, female elephant, front left leg caught in a wire snare. Her calf is trapped in a trench looks like an irrigation ditch, maybe 6 feet deep. The calf is in water up to its neck and the levels rising. A pause, the sound of a chair scraping back. How deep is the wire? Lucas squinted at the mother's leg. Deep. It's cut through the skin. She's bleeding, but it's not arterial. Every time she tries to reach the calf, she pulls it tighter. And the calf is injured, exhausted, maybe hypothermic. It keeps going under. The woman, Dr. Ellen Hartley, according to the voice that had answered, exhaled slowly. We're 90 minutes out, minimum. The Delta roads this time of year are more suggestion than infrastructure. 90 minutes. Lucas looked at the calf. Its trunk wavered above the waterline like a periscope, the tip opening and closing as it fought to breathe. The water had risen another inch since he'd arrived, maybe 2. I don't think she has 90 minutes. The calf. Either of them. Silence on the line. Lucas could hear Hartley thinking, could almost see her running calculations distance, terrain, the weight of what he was asking. Can you stay with them? The question landed in his chest like a stone. He looked at the mother. She had stopped struggling. Her trunk hung limp over the edge of the trench, the tip barely touching the water where her calf fought to keep its head up. She was watching Lucas now. Her eyes were small for her size, set deep in wrinkled skin the color of storm clouds. The whites had gone pink with stress. Lucas had seen that look before. Different eyes, different face, but the same expression. A woman in a refugee camp, watching soldiers load her children into a truck. A father in a hospital corridor, staring at a door that wouldn't open. The look of someone watching the thing they love most slip away while every cell in their body screamed to stop it. Sir. Are you still there? Lucas's throat tightened. Yeah. I'm here. Can you stay with them until we arrive? Sometimes just having a presence nearby keeps them calmer, keeps them from hurting themselves worse. Stay? The word sat in his mouth like something he'd forgotten how to swallow. 30 years of watching through a lens. 30 years of keeping his distance, telling himself that objectivity was a virtue, that the story mattered more than the moment. He had photographed wars and famines and disasters, had built a career on being the man who didn't flinch, who kept shooting when others ran. But he'd never stayed. His father's voice surfaced, unbidden. The last phone call, 3 weeks before the heart attack that killed him. Figured you'd be too busy to come home. You usually are. Lucas hadn't argued, hadn't promised to visit, hadn't said anything except, I'll try, pop, in a voice that both of them knew was lying. The mother elephant's trunk twitched. She reached down again, stretching toward her calf with everything she had. The wire pulled. Blood dripped from her ankle into the red dirt. She couldn't reach. She was 3 feet away from her child, and she couldn't reach. Yeah, Lucas said into the phone. I'll stay. Good. Keep your distance 30 meters at least. A stressed mother is unpredictable. Don't approach her. Don't make sudden movements. Just be there. Understood. We're leaving now. 90 minutes. Maybe less if the roads cooperate. The line went dead. Lucas lowered the phone. The morning sun had climbed higher, burning off the mist that clung to the water channels. The air smelled of wet earth and copper and something else the sharp. Sour smell of fear. He found a spot 30 meters from the trench, close enough to see, far enough to be safe. He set his camera bag down in the dry grass and sat beside it. The mother tried again, and failed again, and tried again. The calf's movements were slower now. It had stopped trying to climb. It stood in the rising water, trunk raised, small body shivering despite the growing heat. Lucas checked his watch, his father's watch, the one that had stopped at 3:47. He checked it anyway. 88 minutes to go. Somewhere behind him, carried on the still morning air, came the sound of an engine, not from the direction of Mon, from the west. Getting closer, the mother's ears swiveled toward the sound, her body tensed. Lucas turned. Through the heat shimmer rising from the grassland, a dust cloud approached. A vehicle, number 2 vehicles moving fast, and mounted on the lead truck's roll bar, catching the sun like a warning, the unmistakable silhouette of a rifle. The Land Cruiser stopped 20 meters from where Lucas sat. Dust billowed around it, then settled. 2 local men stayed in the back, their faces unreadable. The driver's door swung open. The man who stepped out moved like someone who'd spent years learning to control every inch of his body. Mid-40s, jaw like a shovel blade, shoulders that strained against a faded olive shirt. He wore the rifle slung across his back the way other men wore jackets like it belonged there, like he'd forgotten it was even present. His eyes swept the scene. The mother, the trench, the calf, Lucas. 3 seconds, maybe 4. His expression didn't change. Conservation. His voice was flat, American, roughened by dust and cigarettes. Lucas stood slowly. Photographer. I called it in. Rescue team's 90 minutes out. The man walked toward the trench, boots crunching on dry grass. He stopped at the edge, looked down at the calf, then at the mother's wire-wrapped leg. His lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus Webb. He didn't offer his hand. Private anti-poaching. We picked up your call on the radio scanner patrol this sector regularly. Lucas Bennett. Marcus nodded once, as if the name confirmed something he already suspected. Wire won't come off without sedation. Calf's gonna drown before your people get here. You don't know that. Marcus turned. His eyes were the color of old pennies, and just as flat. I know math. Water's rising, I can see the line on the walls. She can't reach it. You want to stand here and watch them both die. Or you want to do something. Lucas felt his jaw tighten. What's your solution? Marcus glanced at the mother. She had gone still. Her ears flared wide, her body angled toward this new threat. The fear in her posture had hardened into something else, something that looked like calculation. We put her down, Marcus said. Quick, clean. 1 shot behind the ear, she won't feel a thing. Then we pull the calf out without her charging the rescue team when they get here. The words hung in the air like smoke. Put her down, Lucas repeated. 1 dies, 1 lives. Marcus shrugged. Or we wait, and both die. That's the math. There's a vet team coming. 90 minutes? 90 minutes is a long time for a calf standing in water up to its neck. Marcus pulled a cigarette from his shirt pocket, lit it with a match struck against his thumbnail. 90 minutes is forever. And dead is forever too. Marcus exhaled. The smoke curled up between them, thin and bitter. I've been doing this 15 years. You know how many times I've seen this exact situation? Mother panics when the rescue team shows up, charges them. Someone gets hurt, the calf dies anyway. Everybody goes home with nothing but paperwork and nightmares. He took another drag. I'm trying to save you the trouble. Maybe you've been seeing what you expected to see. Marcus's jaw shifted. A muscle twitched beneath his left eye. And maybe you've spent so long hiding behind that camera. You forgot what the real world looks like. This isn't National Geographic. There's no happy ending where everybody walks away. Lucas looked at the mother. She was watching Marcus now. Her trunk raised slightly, testing the air. She could smell the gun oil. She knew what he was. The calf splashed weakly in the trench. The water had risen another inch. I'm going to cut the wire, Lucas said. Marcus's eyebrows lifted a fraction. With what, your teeth? Lucas nodded toward the Land Cruiser, toward the metal toolbox strapped to the rear bumper. "You got wire cutters in that kit." For a long moment. Marcus didn't move. He stood there with his cigarette burning down between his fingers, studying Lucas the way a man studies a card player he can't quite read. Then he jerked his chin toward the truck. "Help yourself, but you get within 10 feet of her. She's gonna kill you." That's not pessimism. That's biology. A stressed mother elephant protecting her calf will go through a concrete wall to eliminate a threat. He dropped his cigarette, ground it under his heel. "And I'm not risking my guys to pull your body out of the dirt." Lucas walked to the Land Cruiser. The toolbox was dented, scratched, held shut with a bungee cord. Inside wrenches, a pry bar, zip ties, a first aid kit with a cracked lid, and wire cutters, heavy, cold in his palm, the handles worn smooth from use. He pulled them out. Behind him, Marcus lit another cigarette. "You got kids, Bennett." Lucas didn't turn around, didn't answer. Smoke drifted past him. "Didn't think so." The mother elephant hadn't moved. She stood at the edge of the trench, her trunk still reaching toward her calf, her wounded leg planted in the red dirt. Blood dripped steadily now, pooling around her foot. Lucas looked at her. She looked back. Her eyes were small and deep-set, reddish-brown, surrounded by wrinkled skin that told stories he would never know. She had survived droughts and poachers and the slow disappearance of everything her ancestors had known. She had walked hundreds of miles to give birth to this calf, and now she was 3 feet away from her child and couldn't reach it. Lucas started walking. The grass whispered against his legs. The sun pressed down on his shoulders. Somewhere behind him. Marcus said something to his men in a low voice, a warning. Maybe. Or a bet on how many steps Lucas would take before the mother charged. 20 meters, 15, 10. The mother's ears flattened against her skull. Lucas kept walking. His hands weren't shaking. That surprised him more than anything. 8 meters. The mother's breathing filled the air now heavy, labored. Each exhale a gust of warm air that smelled of grass and dust and something darker. Her skin was close enough to see the texture, deep wrinkles like dried riverbeds, patches of dried mud flaking off in the morning heat, old scars that ran across her flank like faded writing. Lucas stopped, lowered himself slowly. One knee, pressing into the red dirt, made his body small. "Okay, Mama." His voice came out low, barely above a whisper. "I know you don't want me here. I wouldn't either." The mother's ears flattened, her weight shifted. The wire around her ankle pulled taut, and a fresh line of blood traced down to her foot. "I just need to get close enough to help. That's all I'm asking." She didn't move toward him, didn't move away. Her trunk twitched a ripple that ran from the base to the tip, like a shudder she couldn't control. 5 meters. The smell intensified dust, musk, the copper tang of blood mixing with the sour edge of fear sweat. Her eye tracked him, the pupil contracting to a black pinpoint in the reddish-brown iris. Lucas kept his hands visible, kept his movements slow. Every instinct in his body screamed retreat. Run. Get away from this animal that could crush him without effort. His feet kept moving. 3 meters. He could see the wire clearly now. Thin, steel cable, the kind that costs almost nothing at a hardware store and destroys everything it touches. Wrapped twice around her ankle, cutting a groove into flesh that had begun to swell around it. Not arterial, she wasn't going to bleed out, but every movement, every attempt to reach her calf, pulled it deeper. The mother's trunk descended, not toward the trench this time, toward Lucas. He froze. The tip hovered inches from his face. He could feel her breath, warm and moist, could see the two finger-like projections at the end of her trunk flexing as she tested the air around him. She was reading his scent, his sweat, his fear, the soap he'd used that morning, the coffee on his breath. Lucas didn't move, didn't breathe. The trunk withdrew. The mother turned her head slightly, one eye fixed on him, and waited. Lucas exhaled. Moved forward. 2 meters. 1. He reached her leg. His fingers touched her skin. Warm. Rough like tree bark. Weathered by 100 storms. She flinched a ripple that ran up her leg into her massive shoulder, but held. Lucas knelt in the dirt beside her. The wire was worse than he'd thought. The first loop had cut through the outer layer of skin and into the tissue beneath. The second loop was tighter. Newer, she must have stepped through and twisted, trying to free herself before Lucas arrived. He positioned the wire cutters around the first loop. The handles were cold against his palms, slick with sweat. "This is going to feel strange," he said, "but I need you to hold still." He squeezed. The cable resisted. His forearms burned. He adjusted his grip, squeezed harder. Snap! The wire gave way with a sound like a guitar string breaking. The severed ends sprang apart, one of them whipping across Lucas's knuckles, leaving a thin line of blood. The mother shifted her weight. Lucas froze. Wire cutters still in his hands, waiting for the charge that would end him. She didn't charge. She lifted her wounded leg slightly, testing it, then set it back down, turned her attention back to the trench. 1 loop left. Lucas repositioned. This one was tighter, buried deeper in the swollen flesh. He had to work the cutter's jaws into the groove, his knuckles scraping against her skin, her blood mixing with his on the steel. Squeeze. The cable held. His hands were shaking now when had that started and sweat dripped from his forehead into his eyes. Squeeze harder. Snap. The wire fell into the dirt like a dead thing. Lucas scrambled backward, putting distance between himself and the mother. His heart hammered against his ribs. His hands trembled so badly he nearly dropped the cutters. The mother didn't look at him. She lifted her freed leg, tested it once, twice, then she turned back to her calf. Her trunk reached down further now. Without the wire pulling her back, she stretched toward the trench with everything she had. The tip touched the water, touched her calf's raised trunk. They wrapped around each other, mother and child, holding on. Then the calf's grip weakened. Their trunks slipped apart. The mother tried again, the same result. The angle was still wrong. The trench was still too deep. She had been freed, and she still couldn't save her child. Lucas retreated to a safe distance. 30 meters. His legs felt hollow, his arms like wet rope. He sat down hard in the dry grass and watched. Behind him, he heard Marcus's voice, low and flat. Well, that was something. Lucas didn't turn around, didn't answer. In the trench, the calf had stopped moving. It stood in the rising water, trunk raised, small body shivering despite the heat that was building as the sun climbed higher. The water lapped at its chin now, every few seconds. It tilted its head back, fighting to keep its nostrils above the surface. The mother reached down again. Her trunk found her calves. They held and slipped apart. Lucas watched their trunks touch and separate, over and over. The same desperate attempt, the same failure. A memory surfaced, uninvited. His daughter Emma, 8 years old, the day her mother drove away with her in the back seat. Emma's face in the rear window, her palm pressed flat against the glass, her mouth forming a word Lucas couldn't hear. He had stood on the lawn, raised his hand to wave, but the car turned the corner before he finished. He hadn't fought for custody, hadn't called his lawyer, Hadn't done anything except stand there with his hand half raised while his daughter disappeared down the street and out of his life. His father's voice again, rising from wherever dead men's voices live. "You always did know when to leave, son." The satellite phone crackled. Lucas pulled it from his pocket. Bennett, Dr. Hartley's voice, strained. "We're making good time. 15 minutes out, maybe less. How's the situation?" Lucas looked at the trench. The water was higher. The calf's nose was barely above the surface. Wires off her leg, but the water's almost over its head. Is it breathing? Lucas watched the small trunk waver, the tip opening and closing as the calf fought for air. Barely. Can you keep it calm? Talk to it, if you can get close enough. Sometimes the voice helps. I don't think talking is going to fix this. Silence on the line. Then, 15 minutes, maybe less. Just hold on. The line went dead. Footsteps behind him. Marcus appeared at his shoulder, rifle still slung across his back, another cigarette burning between his fingers. I can get down there, Marcus said. Pull the calf out before the water takes it. Lucas shook his head. You go near that calf. She'll charge you. Then keep her busy. Draw her attention. And when she charges you anyway. Lucas turned to look at him. You gonna shoot her? Marcus didn't answer. His jaw worked slowly, like he was chewing on something that wouldn't break down. The cigarette burned lower. I'll go, Lucas said. He was standing before he realized he'd decided. His legs moved without consulting his brain, carrying him toward the trench. You're not armed, Marcus called after him. I know. You're gonna get yourself killed. Bennett. And for what? An animal that won't even remember you saved it. Lucas didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Maybe. He reached the edge of the trench, looked down. The calf's eyes were half closed, its breathing rapid and shallow. The water was chest deep now, and rising. The mother stood at the far end of the trench, trunk extended, still trying to reach her child. She saw Lucas at the edge. Her body tensed. Lucas sat down on the lip of the trench, swung his legs over. The mother made a sound, not the distress call, not the torn cry from before. Something else. A warning. Maybe. Or a question. Lucas looked at her. I'm going to help your baby. I need you to let me. He pushed off the edge. The wall crumbled under his weight. He slid the last few feet, landing in water that rose to his chest, warm as blood, thick with sediment that pulled at his boots and tried to suck him down. The calf was an arm's length away. Above him, silhouetted against the bright morning sky, the mother's trunk descended. The trunk brushed his shoulder, not striking, reaching, the tip traced across his collarbone, down his arm, testing his skin the way she had tested the air before. Lucas held absolutely still, chest deep in muddy water, feeling the impossible delicacy of that touch 2 tons of animal, capable of crushing him without effort. And she was being gentle. The trunk withdrew. The mother waited. Lucas turned toward the calf. It stood an arm's length away, eyes half closed, chin barely above the waterline. Its breathing came in short, rapid bursts, each inhale a wet gurgle, each exhale a shudder that ran through its small body. It didn't react when Lucas moved closer. Too exhausted, too far gone. Easy, Lucas whispered. Easy now. I've got you. He reached out. His fingers touched its side, warm despite the water. The skin softer than the mother's, still carrying the fuzz of infancy. The calf flinched, took a step backward, and went under. Lucas lunged. His hand found the calf's neck, pulled it up, water streaming from its trunk and mouth. The calf coughed a horrible wet sound and thrashed against him, legs churning the muddy water into foam. No, 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 stay with me. He got his arm around its body, pulling it against his chest. 60 pounds, maybe 70, solid muscle and bone wrapped in soft skin, struggling with the last of its strength to break free from this strange creature that had invaded its world. Lucas held on. The water was up to his shoulders now. His boots had sunk into the mud at the bottom of the trench, anchoring him in place. Every time he tried to lift a foot, the suction pulled him deeper. He shifted the calf higher, keeping its head above water. His arms burned. His back screamed. The calf's struggles grew weaker, then stopped altogether. It hung limp in his arms, breathing but barely. Its trunk draped over his shoulder like a question mark. Above him, the mother made a sound. Low, urgent. Her trunk descended again, reaching for her calf, but Lucas was in the way now. She couldn't reach without touching him first. "It's okay," Lucas said, though he wasn't sure who he was talking to anymore. "Help's coming. Just hold on." The walls of the trench were too steep, too soft. Every time he looked for a handhold, more dirt crumbled into the water. He couldn't climb out, not with the calf in his arms, not without the calf. He was stuck. The water rose another inch. He felt it creep up his neck, cold despite the morning heat that was building above. The calf's nose dipped below the surface. Lucas hoisted it higher, his arms shaking with the effort, pressing his back against the trench wall to brace himself. "This is how it ends," he thought. "Stuck in a hole, holding on to something I can't save." Just like always. The sound reached him before he understood what it meant. Engines. Multiple. Getting louder. Voices. Setswana and English tangling together. Then a face appeared at the edge of the trench. Gray hair pulled back tight, weathered skin, eyes that assessed the situation in 2 seconds flat. "Bennett." Dr. Ellen Hartley's voice cut through the chaos. "Can you hear me?" Lucas looked up. The sky behind her was painfully blue. "Yeah." "Is the calf breathing?" He felt the small body against his chest, the faint rise and fall. "Yes, barely." Hartley turned, shouting orders over her shoulder. More faces appeared at the edge, 2 men, 3 carrying ropes and straps and a portable winch that they were already anchoring to one of the vehicles. "We're going to lower a harness." Hartley called down. "Can you get it under the calf's belly?" "I can try." The harness came down canvas and nylon, stained with mud and old rescues, smelling of sweat and animal fear. Lucas grabbed it with one hand, keeping the calf steady with the other. The water was at his chin now. He tilted his head back, gasping. "Under the front legs," Hartley instructed. "Then around the belly. Buckle on the right side." Lucas worked the straps under the calf's body. It was like trying to wrap a package while drowning. His fingers fumbled with the buckles. The calf shifted, nearly slipped from his grip. "Come on, come on!" The buckle clicked. He tugged the strap tight. "Got it!" he shouted. "On 3. Hartley called. 1, 2, 3. The rope went taut. The harness groaned. The calf rose out of Lucas's arms, legs flailing, crying out for the first time a high, thin sound that cut through the noise like glass. The mother trumpeted. Not the rumble Lucas had grown used to. This was something else, a full-throated scream that shook the air and rattled his chest. She surged toward the trench, toward her calf being lifted away by strange hands, and Lucas pressed himself against the wall as 2 tons of desperate mother moved past him. "Keep her back!" someone shouted above. "Keep her back!" But the mother wasn't charging the rescue team. She was following her calf, tracking its movement through the air, her trunk raised as if she could catch it. Guide it, protect it even now. The calf cleared the edge of the trench, disappeared from view. The mother stopped at the lip, trunk extended, making sounds Lucas had never heard before, somewhere between a cry and a moan. The vocabulary of a language humans were never meant to understand. Lucas stood in the water, chest heaving, arms hanging limp at his sides. The adrenaline was draining out of him now, leaving nothing but exhaustion and the cold realization that he was still trapped. "Bennett!" Hartley's face reappeared at the edge. "We're lowering a rope. Can you climb?" They dropped the line. Lucas grabbed it, wrapped it around his wrist, tried to pull himself up. His arms didn't respond. They had spent 10 minutes holding 70 pounds of calf above water. They were done. He fell back. The water closed over his head for a moment, warm and dark, before he fought his way back to the surface. "I can't," he gasped. "My arms." Hartley turned, said something he couldn't hear. Then another figure appeared at the edge. Marcus Webb. The rifle was gone, left somewhere behind. He lay flat on his stomach at the edge of the trench, one arm extended downward. His face was unreadable, but something had shifted in his expression, something that hadn't been there an hour ago. "Grab on. Bennett." Lucas looked at that hand. This was the man who had wanted to kill the mother, who had called it math, who had looked at a desperate animal trying to save her child and seen only a problem to be solved with a bullet. But it was also the only hand reaching toward him. Lucas grabbed it. Marcus pulled. Another hand joined one of his men, or maybe one of Hartley's team. Lucas's boots came free of the mud with a wet, sucking sound. His body scraped against the trench wall, dirt and rocks tearing at his shirt, his skin. Then he was over the edge, lying on solid ground, staring up at a sky that seemed impossibly far away. He lay there, chest heaving, mud drying on his face. The sun was fully up now. The world was too bright, too sharp. Every color turned up to a volume he couldn't process. Somewhere nearby, the calf was crying. The mother was answering, and underneath those sounds, like a bass note Lucas could feel in his bones, was something else. Silence from the rescue team. He turned his head, saw them clustered around a tarp spread on the red earth, saw the calf lying motionless, wrapped in a thermal blanket, saw Dr. Hartley bent over it. Stethoscope pressed to its chest, her face carved from stone, saw her look up, meet his eyes. Her expression told him everything before she opened her mouth. "Hypothermia." Hartley's voice was flat, clinical. "Water aspiration. It's in shock." Lucas pushed himself up onto his elbows. His arms screamed in protest. "But it's alive!" Hartley didn't look at him. Her hands moved over the calf's body, checking airways, adjusting the thermal blanket, pressing her stethoscope to different spots as if hoping to find a stronger heartbeat hiding somewhere. "For now," the words landed like stones. Lucas got to his feet. His legs didn't want to hold him. He stood anyway, swaying slightly, watching the team work over the motionless calf. Its eyes were closed. Its trunk lay limp on the tarp. Only the faint rise and fall of its chest proved it was still alive, 20 meters away. The mother paced, back and forth, her trunk raised toward her calf with every pass, reaching for what she couldn't touch. The rescue team had formed a loose perimeter, not threatening her, but present, keeping her at a distance while they worked. Every few seconds, she called out, that low rumble again, the one that traveled through the ground, but it was different now, softer, a question instead of a cry. The calf didn't answer. Lucas walked away from the group. His boots squelched with each step, waterlogged, heavy. Mud caked his pants, his shirt, his arms. He could smell himself sweat and fear and the thick mineral stink of the trench. He found a spot behind one of the rescue vehicles, out of sight, leaned against the hot metal, tried to breathe. His hands were shaking. When had they started? He couldn't remember. He looked down at the mud under the fingernails, a thin cut across his knuckles from the wire, tremors running through every finger like current through a bad connection. The photograph. He hadn't thought about it in months, had trained himself not to think about it, the way you train yourself not to touch a hot stove. But it was here now. Rising up from whatever grave he'd buried it in Rwanda, 1994. The road outside Kigali. Bodies stacked along the ditches like firewood. And in the middle of it all, a child 4 years old, maybe 5, reaching for her dead mother's hand. Lucas had been embedded with a journalist team. They'd come around a corner and found the scene, and everyone else had frozen, but not Lucas. Lucas had raised his camera. 17 frames. He remembered the count exactly. 17 frames, adjusting his aperture between shots, checking his focus, making sure the composition was right. The child's fingers, the mother's slack face, the flies already gathering. He had taken the shots, and then he had walked away. The image sold to every major outlet in the world. It won the Pulitzer. It paid for a house, a car, a lifestyle that let him pretend the work mattered more than the moment. He had told himself for years I was a journalist. My job was to witness, not to interfere. The camera was a barrier, a necessary distance, the thing that let him be there without being present. But that was a lie. He knew it now. Standing behind a Land Cruiser in the Botswana bush, covered in mud, listening to a mother elephant cry for her dying calf. The truth was simpler, uglier. He had been afraid of getting too close, afraid of what it would cost to step into the frame. So he had kept his distance and called it professionalism. And somewhere a child's hand had never found her mother's, and Lucas had cashed the check. His stomach heaved. He bent over, hands on his knees. Nothing came up he hadn't eaten since yesterday, but his body kept trying, kept convulsing, dry heaves that left him gasping and spitting bile into the red dirt. Footsteps. He didn't look up. "You all right?" "Bennett." "Marcus." Of course it was Marcus. Lucas wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, straightened up, didn't turn around. "Fine." "You don't look fine." The click of a lighter. The smell of cigarette smoke drifting past. "You look like a man who just realized something he didn't want to know." Lucas's jaw tightened. He turned. Marcus stood a few feet away, a cigarette dangling from his lips, arms crossed over his chest. His face was unreadable. The rifle was back, slung across his shoulder. "You did more than most would," Marcus said. "Going into that trench, the wire, all of it. I did what I should have done 30 years ago." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What's that mean?" Lucas looked at his hands, still shaking, covered in mud that was already drying and cracking in the heat. The hands of a man who had held 1,000 cameras and a dying calf and nothing else that mattered. "I'm 58 years old." His voice came out rough, scraped raw. "I've won awards. My pictures hang in museums. People call me a storyteller, a witness, a voice for the voiceless." He laughed a short, bitter sound. "And I have never once saved anything that mattered. Not one thing. In 58 years. Marcus took a drag. Exhaled slowly. "That calf's still breathing. Bennett. For now." The words hung between them. The same words Hartley had used. They didn't sound like hope. They sounded like a countdown. Lucas turned away. His legs gave out, and he sat down hard in the dirt, not beside the vehicle now, but in the open, where anyone could see him. Mud soaked through his pants. He didn't care. He sat in the red African dirt with his head in his shaking hands and listened to the mother elephant call for her child. His father's watch pressed against his wrist. 3:47. The hands frozen at the moment the old man's heart had stopped. Alone in a hospital room while Lucas adjusted his aperture 4,000 miles away. He hadn't saved his father, hadn't saved his marriage, hadn't saved his daughter. and now he was sitting in the dirt while a calf he'd pulled from the water died anyway. You always did know when to leave, son. His father's voice, his father's gift. Lucas sat in the mud and let it take him. Let the shame wash over him like the water in the trench, filling his chest, his throat, his eyes. He didn't cry, hadn't cried in years, had forgotten how but something was leaking out of him anyway, something that had been sealed up tight for decades, finally cracking open. Somewhere behind him. The mother elephant's calls grew quieter, more desperate, and then stopped. Lucas lifted his head. The silence was wrong. Too complete. Even the rescue team had gone still. He pushed himself up, legs unsteady, and walked around the vehicle. The mother had stopped pacing. She stood at the edge of the perimeter, trunk lowered, body rigid. Every line of her massive frame pointed toward one thing, her calf, which was moving. The calf's legs twitched. Its trunk lifted an inch off the tarp, then fell back. Dr. Hartley leaned closer. Stethoscope pressed to its chest. Something shifted in her expression. Not hope, not yet, but the absence of certainty. A crack in the stone. Heart rates stabilizing. She looked up at her team. We need to transport. Get the... Wait. Lucas heard his own voice before he knew he was speaking. Everyone turned. He stood at the edge of the group, mud-caked and swaying, but his eyes were fixed on the mother. She had moved closer, 10 meters now instead of 20. Her trunk stretched toward her calf, testing the air, reading the scent of her child mixed with the smell of humans and medicine and fear. What if you let her come to it? Hartley frowned. What? She can't reach it while we're here. Lucas gestured at the perimeter of bodies, the vehicles, all the strange machinery of rescue. But if we back off... Marcus snorted. A stressed mother elephant near a medical team. She could trample the calf trying to get to it. Or she could save it. The words hung in the air. Hartley looked at Lucas, then at the calf still breathing, still barely there, then at the mother elephant straining toward them with every fiber of her massive body. We've done everything we can do, Lucas said. The blanket, the airway, all of it, and she's still dying. Maybe... He stopped, swallowed. Maybe what she needs isn't medicine. Hartley's jaw tightened. She looked at the calf's closed eyes, the shallow rise and fall of its chest, the trunk that lay limp and unresponding on the tarp. Everyone back. Her voice was quiet but firm. 30 meters, no sudden movements, no noise. One of her team members started to protest. She cut him off with a look. Now! They retreated. Lucas moved with them, legs heavy, every step an effort. He found a spot at the edge of the new perimeter and lowered himself into the grass, watching. The mother didn't move at first. She stood where she was, trunk raised, testing this new configuration of the world. The humans had pulled back. The strange machines had gone quiet, and between her and her calf, for the first time in hours, there was nothing but open ground. She took a step forward, then another. Her movements were careful, deliberate, not the desperate lunging of before but something more measured. She was reading the situation. Making sure it wasn't a trap. 15 meters, 10, 5. She reached her calf, her trunk descended, touched its face, its ears, its closed eyes. She traced the contours of its small body the way a human mother might trace the features of a sleeping child, memorizing by touch what the eyes could no longer see. The calf didn't respond. The mother's trunk moved to its chest, pressed there, feeling for the heartbeat beneath. Then she did something Lucas hadn't expected. She lay down, 2 tons of elephant, lowering herself to the ground beside her calf, positioning her body to block the sun that was climbing toward its peak. Her massive flank pressed against the calf's small form. Her trunk draped over its body light, steady, a constant pressure. And she began to hum, not the rumble of distress, not the trumpet of alarm. Something else. Something Lucas had never heard before. A low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from deep inside her, resonating through the ground, through the air, through the small body pressed against her side. She's warming it. Hartley's voice was barely above a whisper. Body heat and contact. That's better than anything in my bag. Marcus stood beside Lucas, rifle forgotten on his back. His face had gone strange, soft in a way Lucas hadn't thought it could be. "You're telling me the elephant knows medicine," he said. Hartley shook her head slowly. "I'm telling you, sometimes all you can do is stay." Lucas watched the mother and calf, his father's watch pressed against his wrist. 3:47. The hands frozen at the moment the old man's heart had stopped in a hospital room in Chicago while Lucas stood in a market in Marrakesh. Adjusting his lens settings for the morning light, he hadn't been there, hadn't even tried to be there, had told himself the story he was covering was important, that his father would understand, that there would be time later. There wasn't, but he was here now. Minutes passed. The sun climbed higher. The mother kept humming, kept pressing her warmth into her calf's body, kept breathing that low, steady rhythm that seemed to say, "I am here. I'm here. I am here." Now and then the calf moved. Not the twitch from before. Not a spasm. A real movement, legs shifting, body turning, trunk lifting to seek its mother's face. The mother's humming changed pitch, higher, faster. Her trunk found the calf's, wrapped around it, held on. The calf's eyes opened. Lucas heard someone exhale, maybe Hartley, maybe Marcus, maybe himself. The calf blinked against the bright morning light, disoriented, weak. Its legs scrambled against the ground. The mother nudged it, gentle but persistent. Her trunk slid under its belly, providing support. The calf struggled, failed, tried again, and stood. Its legs shook, its body swayed, but it stood. The mother rose beside it, trunk still supporting, still touching, still present. The calf took a step, stumbled, took another, at the tree line. Shapes emerged from the bush. The rest of the herd, waiting. The mother nudged her calf forward. They began to walk slow, unsteady. The calf leaning against its mother's flank with every step. And then the mother stopped. She turned her head. Her eye found Lucas small, dark, holding something he couldn't name. She held his gaze for a long moment. 2 breaths, 3. Then she turned and walked into the trees with her calf at her side, and the bush swallowed them whole. Lucas watched until the last flicker of gray disappeared into the green. The rest of the herd closed around them, aunts, sisters, cousins, and then they were gone. Just the sound of branches rustling, feet on dry leaves, fading into silence. He sat in the grass, legs folded beneath him, and didn't move. Footsteps approached. Hartley stopped beside him, wiping dust from her hands. "That was stupid. What you did." Her voice was tired. "Going into that trench. No weapon. No plan. Just jumping." Lucas nodded. "Yeah." "Could have gotten yourself killed. Yeah." She was quiet for a moment, then softer. "It was the right kind of stupid, though." Lucas almost smiled. "My old man used to say something like that, right before he did something that got him in trouble." "Sounds like he knew you." "Not as well as either of us pretended." Hartley squeezed his shoulder once, briefly, then walked back toward her team. They were packing up the equipment, loading the vehicles, preparing to move on to the next emergency. There was always a next emergency. Marcus passed him on the way to his Land Cruiser. Stopped. Didn't look at him. You were right. His voice was gravel. About seeing what I expected. Lucas turned. Maybe we both were. Marcus nodded once. Got in his truck, the engine started, and the dust cloud followed him back across the grassland until he was just a shimmer on the horizon. Then nothing at all. Lucas sat alone on the red soil. The sun was high now, the delta glittering with light. The trench was still there ugly. Raw, filling slowly with water that would go nowhere. Someone would have to deal with it eventually, fill it in, restore what had been broken. He looked at his father's watch, 3:47, the hands frozen where they'd been for 8 years. He unclasped it, held it in his palm, the weight of it familiar, the silence of it complete. He didn't throw it away. He put it back on, but something had shifted. He could feel it in his chest, in the way the air moved through his lungs. Something that had been locked was now open. Something that had been still was now moving. His camera lay in the grass where he'd dropped it hours ago. He picked it up, checked the lens out of habit, pointed it at the trees where the elephants had disappeared. His finger rested on the shutter. He didn't press it. Some moments aren't for capturing. They're for carrying. If something in this story sat heavy with you, that's all right. Some moments aren't meant to be understood right away. They stay with us, quiet, unfinished, waiting for a time when we're ready to hold them differently. Many of us have stood at the edge of something and wondered if we still had it in us to step forward. Many of us have carried regrets we don't speak about, the calls we didn't make, the hands we didn't reach for, the moments when we chose the safe distance instead of the difficult closeness. Perhaps you know what it feels like to watch something slip away and wish you had moved sooner. Perhaps you've also learned, somewhere along the way, that it's never too late to stop being the person who leaves. This story doesn't need to resolve anything for you. It's okay if it just rests there, somewhere between the chest and the throat. Familiar and tender and yours to carry however feels right. Whatever you're holding today, seen or unseen, spoken or quiet, you're allowed to let it be. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know.